Well, welcome everybody. We are here to celebrate and learn more about Maggie Schein's expanded edition of her book, The Lost Cantos of the Ouroboros Caves, recently published by Story River Books. Maggie is an incredibly accomplished woman. She is a highly accomplished ballet performance dancer. She holds a PhD in ethics, and she is now an incredible writer. Maggie, why don't you tell us a little bit more about why we're here tonight?
Right. So this is a collection of what I call fables and what other people call stories, and this has actually been an ongoing argument for about 3 years between Pat Conroy, my father, Bernie Schein, and me, because we don't know what to call them, and that's all by way of saying I don't really have a good intro. And my publisher, my father, Pat, and my publicist all get very annoyed when I say that I don't have the elevator speech for these stories. And rightly so. But I think of it like this. I'm not sure when I present them what I'm doing it for. Am I supposed to be marketing them? Which feels really creepy. Or am I supposed to be inviting a conversation, which is what I would really like to do. But then it's sort of like a dating game. So do you want the story with the red curly hair? Or do you want the story with the cowboy boots? Or do you want the story, right? It becomes awkward for me. So I still don't have, after all these years, these originated many years ago and were recently published in this edition. But I still don't have a good elevator speech for them. So what I'll say is this. I like to think that they come from that.
We need to see.
I would like to think that
That was right on time.
I'd like to think that even as we grow older and we have to develop beliefs and certainties and convictions and cell phones that aren't off, that as we do that, we retain the questions that we had as children, the questions that they sort of lurk in a dark room behind everything we think we're certain of. And one of them might be death. Death is just, I don't care how old you are or what your beliefs are. I think the questions remain. And I don't think they just stay the same. I think they develop. And they keep growing in that dark room and keep developing, hanging on that wire. And so these are stories that come from me peeking into that dark room. Sometimes they're from my own dark room. Sometimes they're from maybe peeking into someone else's dark room. With or without their permission, but that's where they come from, and that's really all I know to say about them. They are about love and death and life after death and what might happen in between those things, and all those things mixed together. And so that's why it becomes very difficult and awkward to try to explain them. So that's what I have to say about that.
Well done.
Thank you.
Now, your editor, Pat Conroy, has likened your book to the work of a fallen angel, and has said, I've always been one of those readers ensnared by the bright light of language and the masters who can hurl that language into the air to make new galaxies for a tired out sky. Instantly, I knew I'd discover a grand master with Maggie, and her book flew me out toward the great books where ideas were as original as the words themselves. To this point of originality that you have brought to this magical collection of stories that really transport us to other worlds, and holding a PhD in ethics, you were a university philosophy professor, are these tales intentionally imparting moral lessons akin to what we think of when we think of Aesop's fables, or are they different, and how?
I'm really quite delighted that you asked that, because I often have to introduce them, since I use the word fable, by saying, no, not in Aesop's sense. No, there is, the whole point is these are questions that I think are perennial for almost all of us. So if I had an answer, I wouldn't write. So I don't have a moral lesson at the end. They're supposed to be meditations and reflections to allow people to pull back the curtain a little bit and open that darkroom door and walk in and peek around. right? Not to give some kind of solution. I certainly would never want to say that I had any solutions to anything. So they're not fables in that sense. They are fables in the sense that they are based on things that I think, as I said, are sort of universal. They're archetypes. They're problems and questions and wonders that I think we all share. So in that sense, they're more fable-like than say a normal short story that might be set in Minnesota in 1994 and Billy is the main character, right? These are about a place that is unidentifiable, but hopefully universal. Characters have names that are positions, like the butcher, the seamstress, right? The witch. They're archetypal in that sense. And so in that sense, they're fabulistic, but not in any sort of morally authoritative way.
So, and they're sort of dreamlike visions. How do these meditations come to you? Do they come to you wholly formed? Or do the characters come to you first and then they go on journeys in your mind? How do these stories develop?
You're difficult. All of the above. So sometimes, I mean, the origin of most of them comes from me not having an answer to a question and not being able to solve a problem. So being confused, basically. So I had a friend, for instance, who was I still have her. She's a delightful creature, and she's a mix of everything. She's like a what do you call those creatures that are part one thing, part another thing?
Shapeshifters.
Well, that too. She's also that. In any case, a centaur. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's no surprise that she didn't quite know often whether she was to run or to fly or to walk or to crawl, because she was all those things and could do all those things. And that, of course, led her into various troubles. And as her friends, there really wasn't anything I could do to solve that. That was her path and her journey, and her path of not knowing which path was her path. And so all I could do is sit there and watch. And so that's painful, right? When you want to help something like,
sure,
and you can't.
Sure.
And so that was that's an example of where some of it comes from, is moments like that when I'm sitting there going, there's nothing I can do. And so all I can do is write this creature in the most beautiful way that I'm capable of, and try to lay out a path in my own head. And that at least helped me. It didn't really help her. She didn't even read it, I don't think. But she did, however, officiate my wedding. So not all was lost. So it comes from there. It comes from, yes, dreams. I have an affliction with dreams. And to me, they're as real as anything else. So sometimes it comes from there. The landscapes come from there. And sometimes you just make the stuff up.
Mm-hmm. Well, you write these creatures and these landscapes very, very beautifully, and I'm hoping that you would give us the pleasure of reading a passage or two from one of your tales.
I would love to. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, so this one is, as I mentioned, the themes are often love and death and stuff in between. And this one in particular is about the stuff in between and the ways in which those things get really complicated. So it's called The Priest and the Swan. And you aren't actually going to meet the priest yet. So that comes later. But I'll read a few pages from that. It was an old village. It was protected by a mountain with a mysterious peak that was host to legends of witches, young men, old men, and serpents from whom the mountain was born. The mountain sheltered the well, the square, and the fields in which the lives of the inhabitants played out. History in this village had been lost and found and refined a bit, and so now the people knew that, whatever else they didn't know, they wanted to be loved, and they wanted to learn to love. And this makes them like most other peoples in most other villages, really. What some of the villagers did not yet understand was that there are different kinds of love. The love each one has to offer and the love his or her beloved needs may be very different. And this can make love complicated. The monk in whose soft green eyes the grass self-reflected, who, legend has it, simply arose from the base of the mountain one day as a young man, as though born from the mountain herself, spent his days by the pond, in the field, where the river went to rest. He came to keep silent solidarity with the swan, who circled the pond, stroking the water with her feathers as a mother does a sleeping child. She was not supposed to be there, the swan, and the monk loved her for it. For she was a glitch in the order of the ordinary, a glitch not made by the sharp obstacles people so often throw in their own ways, nor by blind desperation, which can pierce through the fine filaments of the order. She was rather a glitch by choice, by tenderness, through which the divine leaked in. Her heart had snagged on a sadness of the world, and she had decided it best not to leave it. The swan could have gone on. She could have flown away. She could have taken her place as one of the austerely beautiful in the world, or one of the esoteric and mysterious, those being the two rather royal positions the swan may hold. But she did not. She circled her pond, creating soothing ripples, protecting and keeping company a group of souls under her who would never even know she was there. What the swan understood, which many of the villagers did not yet, was that to love is to cherish is to provide, at the most critical moments, the deepest of the beloved's needs. To be loved is to have that which one needs in one's most critical moments. There are, she knew, very different sorts of critical moments. And thus, there are different kinds of love, some of which may be so lonely that they do not feel like love at all. The swan took on this last sort for herself. Her defiant effort endeared the monk, tendering his heart with a mixture of sadness and joy. At a certain time, along the coast of every ocean, the souls of the newly dead huddle at the edge of the water's white foam like sea turtle hatchlings. As the tides come in, they are, as the poets say, taken out into the deep, where they will each deposit into the ocean the sediments of life on the land, and where they will soak in the ocean's great blue. How, then, certain souls come to this pond, to be unknowingly caressed by the strokes of this swan, who is quite indifferent to the affections of this monk, is a long story.
Yeah.